I always thought that was an interesting career, so I ended up pursuing it. And I can tell you one thing, it's one of the best jobs you could ever have. If you like to travel, see exotic places, for instance, next Friday I go to Barcelona, Spain. Tomorrow I'm going to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Um, we basically take people to relive memories or make memories, vacations, and some people go to work. Some people have other houses, so they go visit the other house and families. Others just like to travel. So I started in high school and at your local little airport. You start with a little airplane, pretty much like this. If you want to fly, it takes about, this is just a representative. Can you guys see this little airplane? This is just a basic airplane, but you usually start with an airplane with propellers. It takes about maybe a year. If you really study hard and work hard, you could train to be a pilot in about 2 to 3 years. All right, this is called a tail dragger because it sits on the ground. And this is what when aviation first started, they started with tail draggers. Now they come with airplanes that have 3 landing gear, and it's called tricycle. Like, you ever seen a trike when you guys were little, ride a trike? Did anybody ride a trike? Do you know what a tricycle is? That's what the modern airplanes have now. Now, if you want to be an airline pilot, you can just be a pilot if you want to just fly your family around and friends, or you could go and be a military pilot, or you could be a airline pilot. I'm an airline pilot. My airline, American Airlines, has about 800 airplanes, and it flies all over the world. 24 hours, 7 days a week, there's a plane flying somewhere around the world. It could be in Japan, it could be in Miami, it could be in New York, it could be in London. Now, basically when you fly, you go fast down what they call a runway, and the runway lets you get your speed up. Once you get enough speed, you pull back on a control column, the airplane goes up. You push forward, the airplane goes down. And when you turn to the right, it turns right. When you turn left, it turns left. Now, my job you just don't sit at the airplane seat and fly. You actually have to prepare a couple hours before. And there's many, many people in an airline. They prepare like the flight plan for the weather. They plan for the passengers. They plan for fuel. Do you have enough fuel to get from A to B? Okay? Now when we get there an hour before the flight leaves. And then 1 hour we do what we call safety checks. We do it like we check all the instruments in the cockpit. We go outside around the airplane, make sure the wheels are good, the engines are good, and make sure nobody hit the airplane with a car or a truck, or they didn't hit the building or something. So once we get the safety check, then they board the airplane with passengers, and then we do safety briefings for them as far as masks, seat belts, what you do if the seatbelt sign's on. You stay in your seat. So sometimes we hit what they call turbulent or rough air, and you don't want to get hurt because it could be very violent. You could go up and hit the ceiling, and then you could break a bone or a card, or cups and dishes can fly all over. After that, there's 3 phases of flight: the takeoff, the cruise, and then the descent and landing. My flights generally are 8 hours. Could you imagine being in an airplane 8 hours from Miami to London, England? It's about 8 hours. Some flights are maybe 20, 30 minutes if you go from Miami to Orlando or Miami, Tampa. There's certain ways, if you want to be an airline pilot or aviation career, you don't have to be an airline pilot. You could go the civilian route, which means that you go pay for your own flight instruction, or you get scholarships at colleges and universities, or you can go the military route. A lot of people go military route, and that means you go to the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. They pay for your flight instruction, they pay your salary, and they usually have pretty good benefits. It's just whatever you want to do. You can also fly what they call corporate flying. Does anybody have an idea what a corporate flying means? That means a company like Apple Computers. They might have their own airplane. You might fly Apple Computer executives or bosses around the world. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I don't want to get too technical, but it's a great job. I love looking down when you're flying. I like to look down at like cities and oceans and sometimes mountains.
Okay, Mr. Go, so you can start with your class. You can start with your class. I have several questions. Go
Sure.
ahead.
Who's got the first question?
Yeah, I'm asking them to tell me them. So my first question that a student asked is, how many different types of airplanes have you flown?
That's a lot. That's a good question. American Airlines right now has, one, two, three. They have 4 different types. I've flown 3 of the 4 types. But in the aviation world, there's thousands of different airplanes. Different countries make airplanes that we never even seen in Russia, China, India. But there's probably, I would say, at least 10,000 different types of airplanes. But I've personally flown probably about 50 different kinds of jets. I've flown turboprops. I've flown just general piston airplanes. But they also have other airplanes called gliders. I've never flown those, or airplanes that go on the lakes and oceans called seaplanes or float planes. But to answer your question, I've flown about 50 different kinds of airplanes.
50 different. Well, they're all shocked. Let me find another question. Valerie, what is your question? What's an Apple plane? He was just using Apple.
No, Apple's, yeah, correct.